Garry, when I resigned my former job and started what is now North Group Consultants, you were 6 years old. So that's a while ago.
It is a while ago.
You've matured.
Yeah. A little bit.
very, very, very nicely, I might add. But I was thinking, so when you start a business from nothing, as we say, from scratch, as I was fortunate to do, there's seasons you go through in business, and certainly whether it's financially or from an organizational or even perhaps a stress standpoint, there's different things that maybe the family feels or learns along the way. And I was just thinking, so you were in our home for 12 years until you were 18 and went away to college. Are there things that you remember about being in a startup business owner's family, things that you maybe picked up from that? Could be positive, could be negative, or things that would have influenced you about your own vocational choices. What do you remember?
Sure. Yeah, well, I think one thing that was really unique that I know you were intentional about, and that is very different, I think, from maybe business culture today, is the business wasn't a dinner table conversation for us. Mm-hmm. You were very intentional about putting boundaries mm-hmm. around when you were working, mm-hmm. and when you were home, you were home. I thought that was a great example. And I think that shows us the amount of control you have when you own your own business. Mm-hmm. And that can go one of two ways.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
If we're intentional about harnessing that control mm-hmm. for a good balance in our lives and keeping our priorities straight, it can be an enormous advantage. Mm-hmm. If we don't, things can get out of control. Mm-hmm. And so I had a positive example of that intentionality. I think one of the unique things about that is it gave me a perspective that in general, we have a fair amount of control over what we do, how we spend our time, mm-hmm. and what decisions we make. If you were in the corporate rat race climbing the ladder, that wouldn't have been the case. Oh, Dad's out in Chicago for a 3-day thing, or hey, Dad's got to stay at the office till 10 o'clock tonight to finish up a deal. Mm-hmm. Those aren't things that we saw. And so I think maybe more through osmosis than anything mm-hmm. else, although you did teach me a lot of lessons along the way, mm-hmm. that kind of set me up for saying, hey, I want to be a part of a small business.
Okay.
And I would have heard you talk about some of your clients who generally are small businesses like yours and like mine, privately held corporations. Mm-hmm. And I think, probably more through osmosis, but also through some of the lessons that you would have taught me along the way. That's what that set me up for. And that's always what I thought about vocationally.
So when it became time to start thinking about vocation, as you went through, got a business degree from college, you already had a sense that, hey, a smaller business, localized, we might call it, or privately owned at least, would be a better place for you than a multinational corporation or something like that. You had a good idea about that.
Exactly right. Yeah, and I think another thing that really helped along the way is you were always very intentional about helping us learn how to communicate with other adults. As kids, we had a lot of interaction with your mm-hmm. friends. Mm-hmm. If we were out at a restaurant, you saw somebody you knew, you would take us along and mm-hmm. we would say hi to them. We would go to a church that had a fair amount of folks that were in business here in the local community, and we're intentional about interacting with them. Yeah. So I think those examples as well, that seemed normal to me. Mm-hmm. Versus seeing, life in a big corporation.
So it just along the way, it helped you in your communication skills, your comfort level at dealing with people who were at different stages of life than you, and maybe honed some early social skills?
I think so. And that's for me, when I was a kid, I was an introvert, I would mm-hmm. say. Mm-hmm. I didn't love being in big social settings, but we'd play golf together with your friends, and so I was used mm-hmm. to that. Mm-hmm. Being around adults in smaller settings, I do think that helped along the way.
So I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. We were going into a franchise restaurant, a takeout restaurant to get some lunch, and it was one where our daughter, your sister Kirsten, had worked. And I said to him, I think if you could do it, I think every family should influence their children to have a customer-facing job at some point early in their working career. And I wonder, as you reflect, your main job, working through high school and college, was at as a caddy at a high-end country club.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if, in addition to the intentionality that Mom and I had about helping you meet adults and speak well to a variety of people, did that experience help you as well or influence you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because high-end country club, you know what you're walking into. The club here locally that I caddied for, fortunately, has an enormous amount of great people that are members there. Yes, they're generally successful people here in the community, but I was actually anticipating, oh man, I don't know, what experiences we're going to have, and they were almost universally positive, and that says a lot about our community here in Lancaster.
I think it does, yeah.
But I think it also says something about my comfort level, both interacting with adults, but also doing it on the golf course, which is maybe the place in the world I'm most comfortable, because you and I have shared so many memories there. So I do think that was helpful, and it's interesting to think back that, probably my main motivation for caddying was, yes, it was golf, but I also controlled my schedule.
Yeah.
I would say for better, for worse, but you and I will be honest, it was probably more worse than better back then. 17-year-old, 18-year-old work ethic. But that was another experience. I said, wow, having some control over the results was something I experienced there too, that I liked maybe back then for maybe not the best reasons, as I was still maturing, but certainly I think helped also reinforce some of these things that we've already talked about.
So you're going through college, you're taking the standard business and finance courses, and not necessarily in a narrow lane that would have dictated, hey, when I graduate from college, I'm going to get X job, because you weren't an accounting major, a nursing major, an education major, things that channel you direct into being valuable in your second week. How were you do you remember anything about how you were processing your future while you were going through college? And, of course, connect that to the fact that you were able to gain a very valuable internship, I think, between your junior and senior years in college.
Yeah. Needing an internship was the main thing that pushed me.
Was that a
there.
requirement?
That was a requirement.
I did not remember that.
That was a three credit requirement. Was an internship at some point. And yeah, I mean, for me, freshman, sophomore year of college were just being there, meeting friends, getting through class, not thinking about much else. There was a period of time actually in my sophomore year of college I don't know if I want to come back. And thankfully, one of the infinite amount of positive effects my now wife had on me back then was, I think you want to stay in school. Yeah.
Caitlin's all right.
Yeah, she's all right. She's all right. And so get into my junior year, and that's when things started to get real. And on a personal note, my relationship with her took a more serious turn at that point. Started to see, wow, okay, this is the real deal. It's not just something that we're taking week by week. And of course, the pressures of what's next, you start to think about a little more. So I remember you and I talking about an internship, and you said, well, think about who you know, because I still didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do. But I was interested in investing, interested in the stock market, and I didn't really know what my now partner, Lyle Hershey, did. But you and I both know he was in finance, had their own business here. And so I gave Lyle a call, and next thing you know, I had an internship that summer, and that internship turned into a job that I started 10 days after I graduated.
Wow! So you were really fortunate.
Very fortunate.
And very thankful to Lyle and Charlie for offering you that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is being opportunistic in, hey, yeah, you're a 21-year-old kid. It's not like you have these infinite amount of connections, but use the resources you have.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we talked about. Use the resources you have, find what's in front of you, and see where that takes you.
What's one observation you have from the internship experience?
Yeah, one observation that I took away was certainly reinforced I wanted to be a small business.
Okay.
The environment was great. The people were wonderful. The culture, you could tell, was not an impersonal culture. We had a personal culture. And so that was my main takeaway from the internship. And then the other thing was it did give me an idea that, this finance thing, financial planning thing might be something that I'm interested in as a career.
And as I remember it, and I might not have this quite right, sometime around the spring break of your senior year, Lyle Hershey, Charlie Keller invited you out for lunch. What occurred at that lunch?
Yeah, that's when they gave me a job offer. And I will say, I think, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, but I think one thing I did have going for me is I just want a job, any job after I graduated.
Sure. Well, you were getting married too.
We were getting
college,
married.
Getting married, had maybe a little bit of debt.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. There's a little bit there. And so my goal was find a solid full-time job. I remember being in the van with my golf team in college. We were going to a match. And our coach asked us what our expectations were for, what a job would look like and what compensation we were expecting and all those sorts of things. And I had the lowest bar. Maybe that comes from our our roots of being rather conservative with our finances. But I really think that helped because to start out in a small business, it's different than being in the big corporate world. Not only from a duties perspective, I started out as a client care specialist, doing paperwork, processing business, but certainly also to some degree from a compensation perspective as well. And so when they gave me the job offer, I didn't say yes right away, but in my head I did.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was an opportunity, which you needed. Responsibilities of being married and support and all those sorts of things were, 2-3 months away at that point. But it also fit the finance piece. It fit your somewhat introverted personality at the time because you're already acquainted with the people who were offering to employ you. And you had already been influenced that a smaller business environment, a personal versus an impersonal, a localized, privately owned sort of opportunity would suit you well.
Yeah.
And it really checked all those boxes.
Yeah, and one other box was great people.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about that already, but to this day, just great people. And another thing back to the internship that really says a lot about the culture that Lyle and Charlie built here at Masters, and I hope we still have to this day, I believe we do, is they asked for my advice when I was an intern.
Wow.
And I remember in the next interview, they say, hey, we're always looking to get better. We love new ideas. We want to know, what did you observe that maybe we wouldn't see because you're kind of from the outside coming in? And I made one particular observation, and the week before I started my job, we began implementation along the lines of one of my suggestions as an intern.
Really?
Yeah, and
I
so
don't remember you saying that before. That's impressive from the standpoint of Charlie and Lyle's willingness to learn.
Absolutely. I've always said that says way more about them
than it does about you.
Than it does about me.
Sure.
And that was something that was really encouraging to me too. I tend to have a fair amount of ideas. You and I tend to have a fair amount of ideas, theories, those sorts of things. And
some of them actually, a few of them actually turn out to be right. Most of them are highly erroneous in the long run, but yeah.
Depends what mood we're in sometimes too, right? But I saw that this was a place that was interested in ideas. And I think in the back of my head, probably not in the forefront, because the forefront of mine was, let's get a job.
Sure.
But I think in the back of my head, I saw, okay, there's going to be opportunity here. I don't know what it is. I don't have a defined career track. I'm not starting out as an advisor, junior advisor, or anything like that. But it seems like there's going to be some opportunity here, and certainly that ended up being true.
As in my own business, we work through a number of different generational transition patterns, and we see a variety of challenges around that. I would think that one of the things that just presented itself here was the fact that you are a generation younger, a full generation younger than the fellows that you went to work for. And did you recognize that fairly early as a clear opportunity for you to maybe find a route to business ownership at some point?
Yeah, I thought so. One of the other things that's true of us here culturally is is kind of a buzzword today, but we're pretty transparent with everything here at Masters. We like to be open with our team. We have a team environment. The team is extremely vital to our success here at Masters. And that transparency came through in a lot of different ways. And one of them was Lyle and Charlie, when they started this business from scratch in 1994 with two of their other partners, their goal was always to build something that could go beyond them.
Yep.
And that's why this isn't called Keller Hershey financial planning.
Right.
And I give an enormous amount of credit to them for having that foresight back when they had nothing.
Yes.
You and I talked earlier in this series about why. What's the why behind what you're doing?
Yep.
That was part of their why. They wanted to build a team environment. They wanted something that was going to go on beyond them. And they made that clear with us and the team. So I did feel like that was the type of environment I wanted to be in, that they would invest in everyone here to hopefully have them, part of a growing company.
So fast forward now to where we are now. You're a equity partner, a shareholder in this business, and you act as the managing partner of this business. So there's a contrast in a father and son here in our roots to small business ownership, in that my investment in my own business was largely the courage to start, sweat equity, and then an incremental step-by-step building of value. But I never actually really invested a lot of actual money, just a small amount of actual money, and then just build incrementally. Your invitation into small business ownership was much different from that. How would you contrast the risk of buying into an existing business with clear value, which Masters had, versus the idea of starting a business from scratch?
Yeah, well, it took it in two parts. I think we'll get around to the root of that question. But our succession plan, as it relates to me, really had two distinct parts to it. The first part is we were in a position in the business where Lyle and Charlie were open to moving some equity around. And most of the motivation behind that was as another piece of the compensation formula.
Okay.
Less than it was, we're going to put you on track to own a significant amount of equity in this company at some point. That was really the motivation behind the first time that I bought in the company. I was still a buy-in, with a loan associated with it that I had to pay off. But that was a little different than where we are now, which is a well-defined legacy succession plan that the three of us are all on board with. So I think what made that a little bit easier for me, it was a bit of an ease in to ownership. Yeah. And I would say
to see if that suited you.
Exactly.
Could you handle the risk? Could you handle the responsibility?
Correct. It was a rather friendly deal, if we can put it that way. And again, was more part of the compensation package than anything else. And also a hook for more figurative ownership of what's going on with the business. What are we doing strategically? And so what was a challenge for me there is I was 25 years old when I first bought in the business. And I joke with Lyle and Charlie a day, like, you gave me that opportunity way too early. What were you guys thinking?
What were you thinking? It just happened to pay it off for you.
Right. They lucked out somehow. But what challenge it was is this is the only place I've ever worked as far as my career goes. And I didn't have the variety of work experiences that maybe some others would have if they were 10 or 15 years in their career and then had that opportunity for ownership. And so there was still some emotional maturity that needed to come along, but I was already a partner. And so the challenge we had there is there were one or two moments. There was one in particular that sticks out in my mind. You talked a little bit about some of our, maybe you're not your best moment.
My best moments,
And we all have those. I have many, but I'm just going to talk about one today. We had a time when I was in charge of our investment review committee. That was one of the first responsibilities I got here at Masters. I loved it, enjoyed it. Really is what got my passion going for the business. And there was something that I had asked the rest of the team to do, give feedback on something here or there, and it didn't happen as timely as I wanted it to. And on the emotional maturity side, I didn't handle that very well. I kind of went on a
You mean a North thought everybody else should live up to their unexpressed expectations?
Exactly right. Can you believe that?
I can hardly believe that.
So in this team environment where we all act as a team, we all have each other's backs, I'm in the middle of our open cubicle office going on a mini rant about how my expectations weren't met. And again, enormous amount of credit to Lyle and Charlie. Wasn't maybe but an hour later, Charlie said, "Hey, can we talk?" And basically just said, "Hey, well, we got to figure out how we're going to do this because this is not it."
Okay, good for him. Good
right,
for him.
right there.
Yep.
And I remember leaving feeling, my feeling was, of course, a little bit of embarrassment.
Sure.
But also was like, wow, I'm glad I have these guys.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a big moment for us to say, we can talk about this. Five Dysfunctions of a Team, a book that you and I both really enjoy. One of them is we're able to have healthy conflict.
Healthy conflict, yep.
That right there was healthy conflict.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And that really set the stage for our partnership today, where I wouldn't even call it conflict anymore. It's just healthy debate or healthy discussions. They set the table for that early, and it took a few maybe negative experiences to get there, but we rode through that and we got there.
So as we wrap up this conversation and maybe pull a lesson or two out of it, I was thinking about the differences in how I got started in small business and how you got started in business. But one similarity we would have would be that we are in closely held, privately held, highly functional partnership relationships, but they are not with people that we are related to. So they are privately held, closely held, but not family. Advantages of that.
Yeah, the advantages are we can go home and be more separated, I think, from the business. Like you said, it's not a dinner table conversation. Another advantage, I think, is we build our relationships with our future partners or our partners in the business first, and our friendships then come after
along with that. Okay.
It doesn't mean they're secondary, of course, but they come after. And I personally think business first and then friendship is a little easier in a lot of ways than an existing relationship and trying to fit business into that.
And isn't it rewarding when friendship emerges from that?
It's extremely rewarding.
And you have that advantage of not only having that reward, but having that reward cross-generationally, which also gives you an advantage that you can see in the case of Charlie and Lyle, how they've so successfully navigated a challenging business life, integrated it with their personal life. They're both great husbands, both great fathers, and in that way, you have more than one role model to pattern your life after, and I think you're very fortunate that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, who would have thought that I would be blessed enough to have really two of my closest friends be a whole generation ahead of me, be able to learn all those lessons. And I think it also is an interesting connection of going back to that why. Them having the foresight to say, we want this to be a legacy business, is why they gave me an opportunity early, why they've continued to give me these opportunities. Because without that, I could see both of them saying, hey, you're not going through what we went through when we started this business. Right. It's different.
It is.
You're not worried about paying the bills.
Right.
You're not worried about, if your family's going to be okay, if your business is going to make it. I have to worry about something a little bit different, but they respect that because they believe in the legacy of the business, and that's one of their goals. And if they didn't have that, I think you could get there would be chances for more disconnect between someone who started the business from scratch and someone who's buying into something different, because like you said, the risk profiles are just completely different in a myriad of ways.
And I can tell you that it's tempting every once in a while to say to those that weren't there, you'll never know what it was like.
Right.
But it's not really that helpful. And also, it keeps us from being what we all want to be in business, which is focused forward, benefiting from the lessons of the past, rather than going backward and looking backward for, self-justification.
That's exactly right.
You got a very good opportunity, and congratulations for making good on it.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.